They think I don't see it. They think that because I spend my afternoons deadheading roses in the garden and wearing a cardigan with a slight tea stain, my mind has started to soften like an overripe peach. My son, Dominic, and his wife, Bianca, have developed a new way of speaking to me lately. Loud, slow, and dripping, with a patronizing sweetness that makes my skin crawl. We were sitting in their pristine white-on-white kitchen in Oak Ridge, a gated cul-de-sac of 10 identical multi-million-dollar houses. I had helped them with the down payment 5 years ago, or at least that's the story Dominic tells his friends over expensive scotch. Mother, Dominic said, sliding a glossy brochure across the marble island. He didn't look me in the eye. He was busy adjusting his gold watch. Bianca and I have been talking. This house, the upkeep is becoming a lot. The stairs, the garden, the isolation. Pine Valley has a wonderful wellness centre. You'd be with people your own age. I looked at the brochure. It featured a group of elderly people laughing at a bland-looking salad. I'm 55. I run 5 miles every morning before they even wake up, and I still manage my own investment portfolio. I'm not old, Dominic, I said, my voice as calm as a still lake, and my house is only 3 blocks away. I manage just fine. Bianca leaned in, her perfect manicure clicking against her wine glass. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. But Catherine, we're worried. You're becoming so forgetful. Last week you forgot to lock your front gate, and with the kids getting older, we really need to focus our energy. If you were at Pine Valley, we wouldn't have to check on you every day. Check on me? They only come over when they want a free babysitter, or when Dominic needs a temporary bridge loan for his failing tech startup. The decision is practically made, Mother, Dominic said, using his boardroom voice, the one he uses when he wants to feel powerful. We've already looked at your finances. If we sell your house, it covers the entrance fee at Pine Valley and leaves a significant amount for the kids' college fund. We've even started interviewing realtors. I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised on stories of integrity. Behind him, Bianca was already scrolling through her phone, probably picking out the Italian marble she'd use to remodel their guest wing once my equity hit their bank account. They didn't realize that I wasn't just a widow living on a pension. They didn't realize that when my late husband died, he didn't just leave me a house, he left me a legacy. You've looked at my finances? I asked, taking a slow, deliberate sip of my tea. It's for your own safety, Catherine, Bianca chirped. We just want you in a managed environment. I set the cup down. The clink of the porcelain against the marble sounded like a judge's gavel. You want me out of the way so you can liquidate my life to save yours. Let's be honest, Dominic. Your firm hasn't landed a new contract in 8 months. You're drowning in debt, and you're looking at my house as your life raft. Dominic's face turned a dusty shade of red. That's irrelevant. This is about your health. My health is perfect, I said, standing up with a grace that made Bianca blink. But your memory seems to be failing you. You see this neighborhood? This beautiful, quiet cul-de-sac where you feel so superior. I gestured toward the window, looking out at the 10 luxury houses huddled together in the evening mist. What about it? Dominic snapped. You think you pay your mortgage to a big, faceless bank, I said, a small, cold smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. But banks sell their debts, Dominic. They sell them to private holding companies. Do you know who owns Rosewood Assets? The company that holds the deed to every single house on this street. Silence fell over the kitchen. Bianca stopped scrolling. I don't just own my house, Dominic, I whispered, leaning in so he could see the clarity in my eyes. I own the land under your feet. I own your neighbour's roof. I own this entire cul-de-sac. And if you ever put another brochure for a nursing home in front of me, I will remind you exactly what happens when a tenant tries to evict their landlord. I walked out of the kitchen, the sound of my heels echoing on the floor they couldn't afford, leaving them standing in the shadow of the woman they thought was forgetful. The silence I left behind in that kitchen was more satisfying than any meal I'd ever cooked. But I knew Dominic. He inherited his father's chin, but he inherited my stubbornness. He wouldn't just sit there and accept that his fragile mother held the keys to his kingdom. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. It wasn't the rhythmic, familiar knock of a son coming for Sunday dinner. It was a sharp, aggressive staccato. I opened the door to find Dominic and Bianca standing there, but they weren't alone. Beside them stood a man in a cheap, poorly fitted suit holding a briefcase. He looked like the kind of person who specialized in finding loopholes in people's lives. "Mother," Dominic said, his voice forced and tight. "This is Mr. Vance. He's a specialist in senior legal protections. We've spent 48 hours looking into your Rosewood assets claim, and frankly, we think you're confused." Confused? I invited them in, leading them not to the cozy living room, but to the formal dining table. I wanted the coldness of the wood between us. Bianca didn't sit. She paced. "Catherine, Rosewood Assets is a multi-layered offshore entity. It's impossible for one person to own it without a massive public filing. We think you've seen some papers and misinterpreted them. Maybe it's the early stages of, well, you know." "Dementia is the word you're looking for, Bianca. Don't be shy," I said, leaning back. Mr. Vance cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harrington, I've been instructed to file a petition for a conservatorship. Given the complexity of these delusions regarding property ownership, Dominic and Bianca feel it's best if they take over your legal and financial decision-making for your protection." They were going for the jugular. They weren't just trying to move me, they were trying to erase my personhood. "A conservatorship," I mused. "That's a very heavy word, Mr. Vance. It requires a lot of proof." "We have your medical records from last year when you had that dizzy spell," Bianca added, her eyes gleaming, "and the fact that you're claiming to own a $20 million cul-de-sac while living in a house with a squeaky gate. It's a textbook case of detachment from reality." I didn't argue. Instead, I picked up the landline phone on the sideboard and pressed a single speed dial button. "Mr. Sterling? They're here." "Yes, the specialist too. Could you bring the Harrington ledger and the 2021 restructuring files?" "Thank you." Dominic scoffed. "Sterling? That old family lawyer? He's probably as senile as you are, Mum. He hasn't handled a real case in a decade." 10 minutes later, a black sedan pulled into my driveway. Mr. Sterling stepped out. He was 70, dressed in a three-piece suit that cost more than Dominic's car, and he carried a silver-tipped cane like a scepter. He walked into the room with the quiet confidence of a man who knows exactly where the bodies are buried. "Mr. Vance," Sterling said, barely glancing at the cheap suit. "I see you've been busy. It's a shame your firm didn't teach you how to check the ultimate beneficial owner registry before threatening a Harrington." Sterling opened his briefcase and laid out 3 thick files. He didn't give them to Vance, he gave them to me. "Catherine," Sterling said softly, "the papers are ready. Since Dominic and Bianca are concerned about financial mismanagement, I thought it was the perfect time to show them the new rental agreements for the Oak Ridge properties." I turned to a specific page and slid it across the table to Dominic. "What is this?" Dominic asked, his hands shaking as he read. "That," I said, "is a notice of rent increase. Since the holding company is restructuring, the rent for your house is going up by 400%, effective immediately, and since your tech firm is currently using your home office as its registered headquarters, which is a violation of your residential lease, I'm also initiating an audit of your business assets." Bianca's face went white. "You can't do that. We have a mortgage." "No, Bianca," Mr. Sterling interjected smoothly. "You have a private loan agreement with Rosewood Assets. Paragraph 12, Section B. The lender reserves the right to call the full balance due if the tenant attempts to legally impair the lender's mental or physical standing." I looked at my son, who was suddenly realizing that the fragile woman in the cardigan was the only thing standing between him and total bankruptcy. "Now," I said, standing up, "are we still worried about my confusion, or should we talk about how you're going to pay me back for the last 5 years of arrogance?" The tension in the room was so thick, it felt like it was choking the air out of the vents. Dominic stared at the rental increase notice like it was a death warrant, while Bianca looked as though she had been slapped. Mr. Vance, the specialist, was already packing his briefcase. He knew a losing battle when he saw one. "You're bluffing," Dominic whispered, though his voice lacked any real conviction. "You wouldn't actually bankrupt your own son, Mother. Think of the grandkids. Think of the scandal." I looked at him, and for the first time I didn't see the little boy who used to scrape his knees. I saw a man who had been willing to sign away my freedom for a marble countertop. "Scandal is for people who can't afford to bury the news, Dominic," I said. "And as for the grandkids, they'll be much better off seeing their father learn the value of $1 rather than watching him steal one from his mother." Mr. Sterling leaned forward, his silver-tipped cane clicking softly against the floor. "Dominic, the audit of your business starts tomorrow at 9 a.m. Since your mother is technically the owner of the commercial space you lease downtown as well, via a different subsidiary, of course, she has every right to inspect the books." Bianca finally snapped. She lunged toward the table, her voice shrill. "This is a trap. You've been planning this. You let us struggle. You let us think we were independent just so you could pull the rug out from under us." "I let you live your lives," I corrected her, my voice rising just enough to command the room. "I sat back and watched as you ignored my calls, as you spoke over me at dinner, and as you plotted to put me in a managed environment so you didn't have to deal with the burden of a mother. I didn't pull the rug, Bianca. You tripped over your own greed." Dominic grabbed Bianca's arm, pulling her back. He looked broken, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, the desperate look of a cornered animal. "What do you want, Mum? You want an apology? Fine. We're sorry. We were wrong. Just stop the audit. If you look at those books, the investors will pull out. Everything I've built will vanish." "Everything you built was built on a foundation of my silence," I said, "and I'm tired of being quiet." I turned to Mr. Sterling. "Show them the third file." Sterling pulled out a folder bound in deep red leather. "This," he explained, "is a transfer of assets. Catherine is willing to halt the audit and the rent increase, but only under one condition. You both sign over your voting rights in the Harrington Family Trust to her. You keep the house, you keep the CEO title, but Catherine becomes the silent chairwoman. Every decision, every penny spent, goes through her." Dominic gasped. "You turn me into a puppet." "I'm turning you into a student," I replied. "You've proven you can't manage your own life, let alone mine. From now on, you will learn how to run a business the right way, with transparency and respect. Or you can walk out of this door, lose the house, the firm, and the elite status you love so much." Dominic looked at the red folder, then at Bianca. Bianca looked at the floor, her dreams of a guest wing remodel dissolving into dust. "You have until tomorrow morning to sign," I said, standing up to signal the end of the meeting. "Mr. Vance, I believe you can find your own way out." As they shuffled toward the door, Dominic stopped. He looked back at me, standing in the middle of my quiet, sunlit dining room. I looked like the same woman who gardened and wore cardigans, but he saw the landlord now. "I didn't think you had it in you," he muttered. "That was your first mistake, Dominic," I said softly. "Never underestimate a woman who has had 30 years to plan her retirement." When the door finally closed, I sat back down. Mr. Sterling poured 2 glasses of water and handed me one. "That was a bold move, Catherine," he said with a small smile. "It wasn't a move, Sterling," I sighed, feeling the weight of the day settle in. It was an extraction. "Now, let's get ready for the final part. I have a feeling Bianca isn't going to sign without a fight." The morning sun hit the dining table, exactly where the red leather folder lay. It was 8:59 a.m. I had already finished my run, watered the hydrangeas, and had a fresh pot of Earl Grey waiting. I wasn't just waiting for my son, I was waiting for the future of the Harrington legacy. The front door opened, no knocking this time. Dominic walked in alone. His eyes were bloodshot, and his expensive silk tie was slightly askew. He looked like a man who had spent the night realizing that his entire world was built on sand. "Where is Bianca?" I asked, not looking up from my tea. "At home? Packing," Dominic said, his voice hollow. "She said she didn't sign up to live in a controlled environment. She wants a divorce, Mother. She says if I sign that paper, I'm not the man she married." I set my cup down. "She's right, Dominic. The man she married was a puppet for her ambitions. If you sign this, you become a man who owns his mistakes. Which one do you want to be?" Dominic looked at the red folder. He picked up the pen Mr. Sterling had left on the table. "You really own the whole street, even the park at the end of the block?" "Every blade of grass," I said softly. "Your father and I bought it when it was just dirt and a dream. I kept it quiet because I wanted to see if you could build something of your own. But you didn't build, Dominic. You just spent. With a shaky hand, Dominic signed his name. The CEO of Harrington Tech was now officially an employee of his mother. What happens now, he asked. Now, I said, standing up and smoothing my cardigan, we go to your office. We're going to look at those discrepancies Mr. Vance was so worried about. And then we're going to have Sunday dinner, just you and me, like we used to. As we walked out to my car, the modest sedan he used to make fun of, the neighbours were out. Mrs. Gable from number 4 was walking her dog, and the young couple from number 7 were loading their SUV. They waved at me, the nice lady with the roses. They had no idea that the lady in the beige cardigan held their mortgages, their leases, and their peace of mind in her gardening bag. Dominic opened the car door for me, his posture straighter than it had been in years. As I sat in the driver's seat, I saw a glossy brochure tucked into the side pocket of his briefcase. It was the Pine Valley nursing home brochure from the first day. I took it out, ripped it into 4 neat pieces, and handed them to him. You missed the trash can, Dominic, I said with a wink. He laughed, a genuine tired laugh, and tossed the scraps into a nearby bin. I started the engine. I was 55 years old, my son was finally growing up, and my empire was exactly where I could see it. The landlord of the Cul-de-Sac was going to work. The house is finally quiet, but the silence is hollow. Dominic is upstairs, his footsteps heavy with a guilt born of fear, not love. I look at my hands. These are the same hands that rocked him to sleep and signed every cheque for his life. I spent 30 years building a man, only to realise I was just an obstacle to be moved, an asset to be liquidated. The efficiency in his eyes is what lingers. He didn't look at me with hate. He looked at me like a budget item that needed cutting. I look out at the cul-de-sac. 10 houses, millions in land. I am the Queen of Oak Ridge, sitting on a throne of deeds and titles. I saved my money, my business, and my pride. But as I watched the moonlight hit the empty street, I realised the bitter cost of my victory. Dominic will be the perfect, obedient son now, but only because I hold the strings to his wallet. Every "I love you" will sound like the click of the nursing home lock he tried to turn. I am the landlord of the cul-de-sac. I have won everything, yet I have nothing at all. I am no longer a mother. I am just a woman sitting alone in a kingdom made of paper.